Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Protecting Cloud Data with VMware vCloud Director and Veeam. Today's event is brought to you by Veeam Software. This event is produced by Actual Tech Media, and my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media. I'm excited to be your moderator for today's special event. Now, before we jump into it, just a little bit of housekeeping here. We first need to cover, of course, we want this to be an educational event. So we highly encourage that you use the questions box there in your audience console. If you see to the left of the slides, there is the word handouts. And then just to the right of that, there's the word questions. In fact, I'll highlight it right now so you can see the questions tab. We encourage you to ask your questions throughout the event. We'll be doing our best to answer those questions electronically, but we'll queue up the best questions for our dedicated Q&A session that we'll be doing at the end of today's presentation. So make sure that you stay tuned for that and get those questions in early. We also have the full slide deck from today's presentation available in the Handouts tab. You can click on that PDF download and check it out after the webinar. And then finally, we'll be announcing the winner of an Amazon $300 gift card to one lucky attendee on today's live event. If you're watching this webinar on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab there where it says ATM prize terms. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to today's expert presenters. Andy Sterniolo. Thank you, Andy, for being here. Andy is a Veeam Solutions Architect for Product Management at Veeam. And also welcome Michael Hague, VMware Director for Product Marketing at VMware. Andy and Michael, thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
Awesome. Well, before I hand it over to our first presenter on the event today, we've got a quick poll for you. I just brought up that poll and it's in the slides window. It says, are you using VMware vCloud Director and Veeam Backup Replication today? So I'll leave that question up here for just a few seconds and allow you to respond. I'll be sharing the results of that with you. And I look forward to seeing what the results are of this poll. So we've got some responses coming in. Thank you for those. Let's get just a few more responses before I share the results. By the way, you answer in the slides window. All right, lots of good responses coming in. Thank you for those. Let me go ahead and share the results. And it looks like roughly 77% aren't using VCD and Veeam Backup today, but 22% are. So thank you for everyone who responded to that poll. Michael, what's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. Then it looks like we've got a large set of folks that are in the right place to help learn about these solutions and hopefully provide a little bit of education. And then a good set of folks out there that are using the solutions today. And hopefully we'll be able to share a little bit more of how to optimize it and some of what's new.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Take it away.
Perfect. And thanks, David. I'm just first off excited to be here. It's always a pleasure to be joining and kind of presenting with one of our strategic partners, specifically with Veeam. Veeam and VMware go back 12 years, long partnership. So excited to be here. So as we think about the presentation today, I'll kick it off here before turning back over to Andy. I want to level set on VMware Cloud Director for those folks not using it to make sure we're all on the same page. And then we'll jump into some of the great services from kind of a data protection and backup side that we're looking at. And just as a way of introduction of where I sit within VMware, it's kind of an exciting role that I'm part of the business unit within VMware that focuses purely on our cloud providers. So our business unit is 100% subscription based, 100% focused on helping our cloud providers out there really be successful. And I think at our high level, kind of our North Star, our ultimate goal here is to see how we can make VMware-based cloud provider environments so simple to design, manage, and operate that providers can continue to shift more and more away from worrying about that underlying infrastructure and more to delivering those differentiated services on top. It's all about how can we help the providers expand their revenue opportunity and ultimately expand their profitability and margin. And excited again, some of the ways that we're leveraging the ecosystem, partnerships with Veeam. Today we'll really double click, dig down into one of those key services that we think is prime for providers to deliver. And kind of, we recognize kind of for the audience out there that, I mean, not all cloud providers are the same. I use that term cloud providers pretty generically, kind of going back to legacy reasons, but but we definitely recognize that it's an evolving space. I mean, our kind of the multi-cloud world itself is moving quickly. How partners are responding to that is moving pretty rapidly as well. I think gone are the days where the cloud provider ecosystem was composed of just a bunch of partners doing kind of vSphere private hosting on site and selling that out. It's become a rich set of new services, new capabilities, whether we're talking cloud native, multi-cloud, containers to kind of classic backup data protection, all these things that are needed to respond to today's demand. And in general, we kind of think about, of course, we still have this core set of what we call our cloud builders. Those are a lot of you out there that are still building data centers, delivering services out of your data center. We're also seeing this shift more and more to either providers focusing on or complementing that first bucket of kind of their own offerings with what we'll call kind of cloud renters or asset light providers, companies, partners that are looking at how do they leverage SaaS-based, VMware-based SaaS offerings like a VMware Cloud on AWS offering to help their business, whether it's for scalability, for geo expansion, or just to shift how you do your business from building data centers to leveraging someone else and really focusing on the services on top. And then the third bucket would be kind of taking that to the next level of the cloud native or next gen MSPs, providers out there thinking really about this cloud native world. How do you do things like cost management, operations? So products like VMware Cloud Health come into play here and help here. So we kind of understand, again, there's a spectrum of providers. Everyone's looking at different ways to grow that business, to expand it. And as we kind of look through today, again, the focus is on some of these services that whether you're in these different buckets, you can help build on. And as part of this journey, flexibility is key. I mean, it's always been a core competency of VMware, as we kind of have worn that Switzerland hat in the past, kind of play a neutral ground. Quick aside, prior to coming to VMware, I spent a number of years in the storage industry, where we've kind of early days of VMware, where kind of SAN-based storage, kind of the shift to shared storage, was really driven by a lot of the VMware push. These were back in the days when EMC owned VMware, though. And as a storage vendor working with VMware, we always kind of this question of how much should we share with VMware? What's the relationship? Are we passing on information that's going to go to a competitor? But VMware always kind of knew how to wear that hat and kind of maintain that flexibility, that focus on flexibility and choice, even if it meant wasn't always what their parent company approved of. And as we kind of think through our approach to cloud providers and flexibility, I think that kind of DNA over here kind of maintains itself. So as we look at how our providers architecting their environments, how do we go from kind of prescriptive to do it yourself? That flexibility is key. More and more, and this is a lot in our talk track, from cloud offerings, VMware based, to the multi-cloud, and how do we kind of move more and more into this multi-cloud world. You're all kind of responsible for SLA promises to your customers, so we need to offer those flexibility of how you define and measure those. And last but not least, of course, is in today's world, a huge focus on applications. This is what's driving a lot of what our end customers are asking for, of kind of a lot of their decisions when it comes to their infrastructure, their cloud choice. So how do we kind of play this balance of supporting those existing virtualized applications, providing that seamless path to cloud native, and ideally kind of bringing some consistency to the infrastructure and operations underneath. And so kind of with all that said, I don't think it would be a webinar without some analyst proof points to validate kind of the need here, and kind of this idea of this shift to hybrid IT. I think this is something that especially you out there in the Cloud community, you recognize. You're at the forefront of driving this and taking advantage of this. Clearly, we have large clouds as well. And the question I get a lot is, as we see this shift, I mean, what's the opportunity for cloud providers? How does it play with the large kind of the big three clouds out there with Google, Microsoft, and Amazon? And I was going to go back to this analogy that I think about and relate it to the banking industry. And I'll use an America-focused example here, but I think this holds true for most countries and regions. I mean, if you look at the banking industry in the United States, we've got a handful of huge banks: JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank. You see their ATMs everywhere. They're the ones that are advertising cool new features on their application. They're the first that brings in features to let you deposit checks while simultaneously washing your dog and cooking dinner, all these crazy things. So they get a lot of the marketing attention. Very similar parallels to where we hear a lot about AWS and Azure and Google and the multi-clouds. However, I don't know if people know this, but there are over 6,000 FDIC insured banks in the US and less than half the banking assets of the US. And this is an industry that goes back centuries, relies on those big banks. And the reason is because end customers, I mean, look to a bank oftentimes that have vertical expertise, regional expertise, kind of flexibility in pricing, transparency in pricing, the ability to meet face to face and solve problems as opposed to just kind of picking things kind of anonymously from online. And I see a lot of parallels with the cloud ecosystem where we'll continue to hear about these big major kind of public clouds, but you as our cloud provider ultimately kind of are providing all these unique differentiated values to our end customers. And it's a huge set of end customers out there that are hungry for that level of engagement. Again, just like we see in the banking industry. So bringing it back to here, I think as we kind of go through here, excited to look at one of those services that we feel is key and something that as we see, a lot of customers are wanting to get. So then let me kind of double click. Again, sounds like a lot of people maybe aren't using VMware Cloud Director out there today. So let me kind of spend a quick comment on this. And for those of you that are using it today, you'll notice one change. We a couple weeks ago with our release of VMware Cloud Director 10.1, we did a slight rebranding. We went from vCloud Director to now Cloud Director. It wouldn't be a VMware product if there wasn't some name change in its history. So it's subtle. It's still VCD, but you'll hear us talk about Cloud Director, so I don't want to confuse folks that have been kind of customers for a while. So ultimately, I mean, Cloud Director is our provisioning management orchestration interface for VMware-based multi-tenant clouds. I mean, it has a number of core capabilities, but is evolving more and more to really be this service delivery platform where these core capabilities can come into play, and then you as a provider can deliver a suite of services on top, really with the goal of, again, helping you differentiate your business and be on par with the public clouds, yet still find ways to differentiate yourselves and be important. And if we dig a little bit just deeper into the technologies behind Cloud Director, the key value prop of Cloud Director that has stayed with it through and through since its beginning is that multi-tenant orchestration capabilities. So the ability to multi-layer virtual data centers with consistent role-based access control policies, on-demand self-service capabilities is really kind of what makes it's this ideal platform for providers. And moreover, the platform is something that over the past few years, from the VMware side, we've seen significant investments, improvements in the UI, more integrations to the underlying technologies, and then of course continuing to stay true to that openness of leveraging the ecosystem, and again partnerships with people like Veeam to bring on key services on top. So my ask is for those of you not using it, if maybe you've looked at it in the past, or I mean you remember seeing it back in VCD 5 days, give it a new look. It's again, the past few years have just been this tremendous reinvestment, focus on innovations, delivering new capabilities to really expand and really kind of establish it as a de facto platform for our key providers in their VMware-based environments, that gives them that control and then that ability to layer on top. And another thing to understand about the platform, and this is always just a kind of a cool thing to think about, and one of the interesting things about this product is it's truly a two-sided platform. I mean, we have two sets of customers. Most of you probably are who are cloud providers, and then of course who you're selling to and delivering to, and that's the enterprise cloud consumer. The cloud provider provisions cloud resources through the provider portal of VCD, and then tenants can interact with the platform through the tenant portal, consuming cloud resources, creating custom environments, and more. For those of you that remember back in the day when we were allowed to take taxis and Ubers and leave our house, you kind of know this idea of a two-sided platform well. Uber is a great example where if you're a rider, you open up the Uber app and log in, you have certain capabilities, you can set destinations, you can see where kind of drivers are at, and you get one experience. If you're a driver for Uber, you log into that app, you have a very different experience. You can see who's waiting for a ride, and you can kind of track your history, and you can choose and see alerts on who needs a ride and navigate that piece. So again, one platform providing kind of two different experiences for different people. Cloud Director is very much the same, and a big focus has been on improving not only the cloud provider experience, but also that tenant experience with all new HTML5 UIs and everything to help them manage more, and cool stuff that we're doing with things like Bitnami and bringing in some of the to attract and appeal to the developers. And I'll try. I'm not going to go any deeper than this slide, just to kind of do kind of a quick overview of the tenancy constructs in VCD. But I mean, it's, in short, VCD creates this layer of abstraction between kind of vSphere and the host. So coming down from the tenant side, tenant will come in, they'll see what we call kind of a virtual cloud director and org VCD, where they can again operate, and they have their own confined environment that's powered underneath by kind of provider data centers and ultimately the underlying infrastructure underneath. And it's the provider's responsibility to kind of manage that infrastructure, but all that is pretty transparent to the tenant on top, and they all have their safe silos that they can operate in. They can do all of their VM management provisioning in their own world very securely, and kind of handle those pieces. Provider manages those pieces underneath and enables all the capabilities on top. And then kind of okay, so kind of stepping then back up again, lots of material for those folks that wanted to dig into Cloud Director more online. But I think kind of what we want to shift the focus on here and pull Andy in here in a few minutes is kind of ultimate goal here of Cloud Director again is delivering this turnkey infrastructure services, and helping providers again find those ways to differentiate on top. So we want to help you kind of up level the more profitable services. Cloud migration, hybrid cloud services, data protection, of course, backup are great examples. We've got numerous testimonials from cloud providers across the world who have become kind of some of the most trusted cloud partners out there in their regions, whether or not there's hyperscaler kind of large public cloud presence. TA2 in Finland, OVH in France, NextGen in India, kind of all examples of some worldwide partners that are leveraging this platform heavily to help power some huge clouds. And so then as we kind of think through the focus over the past year and kind of where we're going again on the service deliveries, what are some of those top managed service opportunities as a cloud provider, as you're kind of thinking through expanding out your offerings, kind of thinking through how do you continue to build that kind of book of business that you can sell and expand your opportunities. Backup and recovery services continues to show up at the top of the list of managed services. So if it's not in your portfolio today, or if you're looking to maybe modernize what you're doing today, then you're definitely in the right spot, and we'll hear from kind of Andy here to really double click into that offering. And so the kind of in the end, it's how do we leverage this ecosystem? How do we start to enable you? And I think we've talked a lot about kind of the core capabilities of VCD, and there's a lot more I've glossed over or haven't touched on. But ultimately, I think what we realize is that there's a lot that goes into building these cloud services, and we're going to get there only through our partnerships of leveraging our ecosystem. So we're excited to be working with kind of leading technology companies to deliver all these different services. So maybe kind of with all this said, and maybe before I get kicked off, I think this is maybe kind of a great point here to bring Andy into the conversation. Hopefully I've set up the basics of Cloud Director, kind of talked a little bit about the opportunity that we're seeing, the services out there, and now let's get into the details, Andy. So let me turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I hope everyone's safe and healthy and just living a good life for what we got right now. So I wanted to, now that Michael's provided us some information regarding VMware Cloud Director, I'm going to make sure I say the new name. Me as an IT admin in the past, anytime VMware changed the name, it was definitely something I always got to make sure I do. But moving along, I want to really talk about a brief history of Veeam that you may not be aware of. So Veeam has supported Cloud Director, or even vCloud Director, all the way back since 2013. Back when support for backup and restore VMs and vApps was first introduced. We saw an opportunity to support our service provider community and to support 5 key restore situations. right? So we came up with the ability within vCloud Director, Cloud Director, for whole VM recovery. So that's restoring your entire VM, guest OS file level restores, restoring of individual virtual machine disks, restoring those individual VM files, and even going to the point of being able to restore an entire vApp, which includes the configuration and those virtual machines. So if we switch gears here, it's worth noting that Veeam Backup Replication now supports VMware Cloud Director 10. vSphere 7 support is coming, but don't upgrade just yet. It is coming. This week, there was a great update from the Veeam forums around our support for vSphere 7 that's coming soon. I'm just as excited as you are, but just hold off for there right now. I have it in my lab, and I got to say, it's some pretty cool stuff. So if we switch gears here just a little bit to our Cloud Director self-service, moving away from support and really looking at the integration that we have with VMware Cloud Director, right? So it's a fast, easy way to configure, get your customers up and running with their own portal. And their own portal, they can perform self-service backups, restores, all within an easy-to-use setup. Nothing complex that you need to tweak under the hood to get your customers up and running with it. So it really provides a value to that service provider offering. If we could take a look a little bit more under the hood of the Cloud Director service. So as I mentioned, it offers native authentication. So the great thing about that is that we integrate directly with Cloud Director. So your customers can log in with their credentials that they would normally use to the tenant, and they can get to the portal. We offer simple job setup with only core settings, so it's very easy for them to get going. And then they can even do things such as setting up multiple scheduling for those jobs. And it's very simple and easy to manage from the provider side. So it's a great offering to give to your customers to immediately get them right in there of protecting those vApps. So next, I want to talk about the customer onboarding. So this is a screenshot of what you would see as a provider with the vCloud Director plugin. And here, what you can see is an example of a list of tenants set up in the self-service portal. And here you can see what repositories configured for them, as well as any quotas they may have, and their current usage. So you can see here the organization France is using one of our scale-out backup repositories performance mode, and they have a 100 gigabyte quota, but they haven't used anything yet. So it's a great view to get a general idea of where your customers are, how much they're using, and where they're going. So I'm going to move on to the next one here. And I'm actually going to pass this back to David.
Yes, sir. We do have a poll question now here for the audience. And the question on the screen I want to call your attention to is, have you tested or deployed the Veeam community plugin for vCloud Director? So I'll leave that up there and let's see the percentages, how they break down. All right, lots of responses coming in. Thank you for those. We do appreciate it. Let me share the results with you. And it looks like just 5% at this point have tested it. Andy, what's your take?
Well, that's interesting. That just means that you have the opportunity to do so. Our community-driven plugin was developed for vCloud Director. You can go over to our Veeam Hub page and take a look at that. I highly recommend that you at least take the time to see if it's right for you. It's another good offering that you can bring your customers. But for more information on that, you can head over to it's veeamhub.com. It has a list of other projects that we have going on, but definitely check that out. So now I'm going to move on to another thing with Veeam, and that's our security. So when it comes to security, we use encryption, whether it's flight or at rest, right? We could scale up to 256-bit AES. Nothing out of the ordinary in terms of security standards today. As an additional thing, we also offer immutability. Now, what that is anyone who might be using our cloud tier, which we'll talk about here in a second, where they have the ability to offload their data to S3 or S3 compatible object storage, you can utilize Amazon's object lock. And what that does is it will prevent deletion of any of those blocks that get marked for that particular time frame with absolutely no deletion whatsoever possible. Not even Jeff Bezos can delete it from Amazon. So it's a very cool additional feature in terms of things such as security and ransomware, which we'll talk about here coming up. So I want to talk a little bit about enhanced object storage with Veeam. So some of the things, these three key features that I wanted to touch on, and then I'm going to bring Michael back in here for some questioning. But the great thing about our current scale-out backup repository now with with cloud tier with object storage, basically allows you to have an infinite capacity for your backups, right? For your offsite DR. And like I said before, those copy of those backups can be made immutable using S3 or S3 compatible, which would protect against ransomware, hackers, any type of an inside threat. And the great thing is too, you can even use your laptop if you wanted to in a disaster recovery scenario. You could restore your entire environment by connecting back up to that cloud provider and restore your virtual machines. So I do want to bring Michael back in. I think this is a great opportunity to talk to him when it comes to object storage. We're hearing from our partners from a DR perspective that's a great long-term retention opportunity. So I want to see, where is VMware seeing their customers leverage object effectively?
Yeah, and a great question. And I know you know we're excited about this. So maybe I'll take a quick second, comment on kind of high level, and then address that. I mean, I think in general, this is one of those solutions that we're really excited about. We talk about kind of how do we leverage our ecosystem and VMware Cloud Director platform to really kind of offer more and more services out there. And one of the ways that we're doing this is we introduce an object storage extension into into Cloud Director. I still need to train myself here, which allows us to kind of connect directly down to object infrastructure underneath the platform. And we started off that partnership working closely with Cloudian, who's kind of one of the leaders and top object storage vendors in the market, kind of bringing those two together, and then working closely with Veeam to do kind of backup as a service, ransomware protection. Really, we've got a really interesting solution here that kind of opens the doors for providers to, again, get new revenue streams. So we see providers now that are starting to kind of move into areas where kind of object kind of cloud storage, the de facto standard for cloud storage is heavily around data protection, big data, healthcare, media archives, video surveillance. Really starting to see a number of partners embrace this offering, because it's one of those that naturally extends what people are already doing with the infrastructure, with the stack, with Veeam for data protection, and again, opening those doors up just for more. So I mean, backup as a service is kind of a great classic example where really allowing that on cost-effective kind of object storage. And I won't go into all the details here, but lots of information on just the kind of the cost effectiveness and the ability to roll this into the environment.
Awesome. That's good. That's really good information. I agree. I think that as this trend of moving things into the cloud develops, I think that partnership between Veeam and VMware and just really looking at the possibilities for what the future has, it's a great partnership, and I'm really looking for what we have in the future. So. Okay, let's move on real quick. David, I think we have another poll.
Yes, sir. The next poll that's on the screen for everyone out there in the audience to answer is, are you leveraging S3 compatible storage offerings for And there's a number of options here. This is a multi-select question. So you can choose backup, application hosting, media hosting, or software delivery. And I'll share the results of this poll with you in just a moment. All right, lots of good responses coming in. Let's get just a few more. Excellent. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll. And the results are 74% said they're using S3 compatible storage for backup, followed by application hosting at 37%. Andy, what do you think?
That's great. It's good to see that a lot of people are using S3 for backups. That's awesome. I really like to see that. Okay, that's good. All right. Moving right along, we're going to talk next about some new things with Veeam Availability Suite version 10. Specifically, we're going to be talking about our scale-out backup repository, some of those new features. So in version 9, we introduced well, actually, let me back up a second. So typically you would have your, anything from direct attached storage, NAS, dedupe appliances, things like that. And that would be, you'd have these single types of backup repositories. And what would happen? Hey, you're getting low on space. Well, the great thing about the scale out backup repositories is the ability to add as much storage as you need to, on-prem, and then being able to offload those backups today in version 10 into Object. And for many of you that might not know, we actually have a Veeam Ready Object program that's focused around on object providers. It's full of tested solutions and performance, and you can find more information about that at veeam.com/ready. And then moving that data into the capacity tier with things like immutability into those S3 compatible and S3 public clouds. It's just a great thing when it comes to long-term retention. But sometimes that can also come at a cost. So it's important to understand how capacity tier works and how we move that data. And if you're a provider, you might want to understand that before you offer that to your customers, because let's say that you, which we'll show a little bit more in a demo after this, but let's say that you're going to be moving your data from on-prem up into the cloud after, let's say, a week, but you have a customer who always does these restores 2 to 3 weeks out, right? So you could inquire extra charges from your cloud provider. So some of those things you might want to take into consideration when offering this as a service to your customers. And then just going a little bit further on actually how to set up and configure the new copy move. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that before, but the new copy mode allows you to take copies of your backups as soon as they're completed and copy them up into object storage. So the previous method of just move would be after a certain amount of time or after a backup chain would close, you would move your backups into Object, where you'd be moving them. So you would no longer keep the data on-prem. Well, with the new copy feature, and this is not even just service providers, this is any Veeam customer who would be using this capacity tier config, you can immediately copy those backups into Object. So now you have a true 3-2-1 if you think about it, right? You have your data on-prem, your backups on-prem, and then you also have your other secondary copies offsite in your object. So it's, like I said, it's definitely a 3-2-1, all from just one window, right? Just turn on those checkboxes and set in those days. So really cool, easy stuff. I was gonna have a demo for this, but it's literally one screenshot, and it would be faster to show you the screenshot than fire up my demo. So, anyways, now retaining data is great with immutability, right? So here in this in this screenshot, we have 14 days. So the 14 days of those data would be protected with immutability. But what about restoring? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is a feature that it's in all versions of Veeam, and it's a great offering to customers as a service provider, but it's called Secure Restore. Basically, what that does is, even though you have your backups in an immutable state, okay, let's say some kind of ransomware attack happens, and you have your backups in immutable object, and you want to restore them. Well, do you know, as an IT admin, if that ransomware is in those backups, even though they're marked immutable? You may not know that, right? So one of the great features with Secure Restore is it allows you to check for malware and viruses before it's directly restored into production. So it's just an extra layer of security to that immutability. And we'll talk about a little bit more deeper here how that works. But if you take a look at this slide real quick, this is just an example where, hey, you've had that malicious file downloaded. You may not even know about it. It gets backed up, and your antivirus might not even know about it, right? Or at some point you get infected, you back it up, and then it takes a couple days for your AV provider to get that signature. Well, the great thing is that, let's go to the next slide here. This Secure Restore works this way. So, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do a restore of my data. This file is infected. I need to get it back. So it's pretty straightforward. You select your restore point. It mounts that data, our portable backup file, to our mount server. And on that mount server, you would have your antivirus installed with your latest definitions, right? And then from there, you would do an antivirus check. So if you run your antivirus check and no infections are found, boom, continue to do the restore. Or, hey, I found an infection. I can proceed with the recovery, but have it disable the network, right? So let's say that you decide that you want to continue restoring it, but you can keep it off the network so it doesn't continue any other further infections. Or the other option is you could say, hey, I found that infection, stop the restore, right? So that right there is, I think, one of the coolest things when it comes to doing a restore. Just a quick story for me, as an IT admin, we ran into a very, very large virus outbreak at our company. And we went through a manual process of cleaning up all of our workstations and removing the viruses from them. And we found that a couple of the servers had lost some data. So we did a restore of that data. This is not a Veeam product, but we did a restore of the data, and the data came back, and so did the virus. And then within 24 hours, all 1,200 workstations were infected again, right? So it's just a great feature to have when it comes to getting into that, that security ransomware thing. I highly recommend you check it out. And one thing to add too is that it works with all major antivirus software. So, Windows Defender, ESET, Symantec, etc. Okay, now I want to talk about another feature called staged restore, right? So malware removal is great. But what happens when it comes to things like compliance, GDPR, anything compliant where you may not be allowed to restore particular data back because of those compliance issues or those compliances that are in place. So this is where we have stage restore, right? So in this example, we're talking about John Smith. He's buying a house, and we capture that data, register it into a database. We back up our backup job, looks good, everything's good to go. And then we run into an issue where that particular server crashes. Well, we need to get that data back, but because of GDPR, we're not allowed to put John's data back in there, right? So with staged restore, I'm going to jump into a little more on the technical side here, so stick with me. So in staged restore, we do a couple different things here. So the first thing we do is we're going to take that backup file, and we're going to load it into something called our virtual labs. our data labs. Well, what that is that's a self-isolated environment used to test things. And now, and I should also bring this up that data labs is not just for stage restore. It's great for things such as pre-patch Tuesday, right? Or a test dev environment, anything that you need to test something and make sure it works. And if it blows up, it blows up. It gets completely isolated. It won't affect your production. So anyways, moving along, we take the backup and recovery replication server, copies a script from the backup server over to the VMs that we plan to restore, right? And then that script executes on every virtual machine looking for that particular thing. So in that example, I believe it was John. We're looking for everything that had anything to do with John. And then all those changes taking place during that script execution, we write those over to Delta files. And then after it's complete, we power off the VMs in the virtual lab. And then we were able to do a restore of the change state from those deltas back into production. So again, an amazing feature. It's a great offering to add if you're a service provider or if you're just a customer. It's also a great thing to use, as well as stage restore, even the secure restore I talked about earlier. Both two options that are really, really great. So I think at this point, we can move on, and if there's any questions, hand it back to David.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation, Andy and Michael both. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll. The poll's on the screen. Just says, what additional information would you like about the Veeam and VMware solution that you learned about today? And we'll leave that up. So let's see. Comment came in from Rudy. He said thumbs up on the secure restore. I like to hear that kind of feedback. Also, a number of other good questions here. Let's see. Adam is asking, how long does the secure restore process take to audit backup data from malware, viruses, and ransomware? And what source data does it use to find issues?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. The question from Adam, he's asking, how long does the secure restore process take to audit backup data for malware and viruses? And what source data does it use to find the issues?
Okay, so the first part of the question, it depends. It would be anything like a normal antivirus scan that you would do on a machine, right? So, it's going to go through and have to search for anything on that particular virtual machine. So depending on the size of the virtual machine, depends on how long it takes. And what was the second part? I'm sorry.
What sources does it use to find the information? So how does it know, like, that a virus is a virus in the backup data?
Yeah, so it uses the antivirus signatures from whatever antivirus product you're using, and that's you would install your antivirus product on the mount server, which is typically the Veeam Backup and Replication server. So it's able to go in and actually look into the backup file and read the data, just like if it's a Windows box, like a normal Windows file structure.
Okay. All right, nice. Another question came in, Rob, he was asking about, why would someone want to use object storage when they could use a traditional just on-site, or it doesn't say on-site, a traditional hybrid flash array with dedupe and compression? What's your benefit to using object storage over that?
Well, the benefit is definitely you're satisfying the 3-2-1 rule. So if many of you don't know what that is, the 3-2-1 rule is where you're going to have 3 copies of your data, 2 different types of media, and one of them off-site, right? So utilizing object storage gets your data off-site, right? So essentially it's infinite space. So Dedupe appliances and things are great, and that's fine. But it's just another option. I mean, and maybe Michael, I don't know if you have anything you want to comment on that particular question.
No, I mean, Andy, I think you hit the key thing. I mean, the other thing is just, I mean, a lot of applications going with S3 and kind of that kind of native to object. So just aligning and giving choice.
Yeah, great points. I mean, that array eventually is going to need maintenance. It's going to need, hardware replacement. Disks are going to go out. At some point you're going to have to replace it. So there's a lot to
Yeah.
think about, in making that decision. Let's see. Another question here is backup of vCloud Director included with Veeam?
Yes, it is. It is absolutely.
Nice.
No additional
Okay.
special thing. It's included.
Excellent. And then another question came in about options for getting backup data offsite. Are there Veeam compatible cloud providers out there?
Yes, there are. So I believe it's in the chat, but it's veeam.com/find a cloud provider. There might be some hyphens in there.
Okay.
But if you go to that
Yeah.
website, you'll be able to browse all of our Veeam cloud service providers.
Excellent. And let's see, Michael, I believe you answered this in the Q&A already, but maybe you want to just reiterate it or elaborate on it. I mean, for people who haven't looked at Cloud Director in a while, VMware Cloud Director in a while, what's new? And you might even want to just talk about for a second, why are companies using Cloud Director?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, here on that last one. I mean, again, talked a little about this. I mean, one, it's that core capability of delivering multi-tenancy. I think it goes back to that root of as you're looking as a provider to offer kind of multi-tenant cloud. Again, get efficiencies of one infrastructure providing support for multiple tenants. Just there's efficiencies, cost savings there. And then more than that, though, again, our narrative, our focus on Cloud Director has been more on taking to that next level of those services, how you extend Cloud Director and really help it be a core platform of your business. So you're focusing, again, less on the infrastructure and looking up at what customers need. So we talked about Object, which is I think a great one and one a lot of people expect to be in the cloud when they look at cloud providers. Automation with Terraform and integration is key. DR as a service and all the data protection work we're doing with ourselves and our ecosystem like Veeam. Containers is top of mind for a lot of providers. How do they start to appeal to the developers and deliver either Kubernetes as a service? So we're doing a lot of focus there, kind of related to that on the application side with the Bitnami catalog now. We've got cool integration with App Launchpad that was just announced for Cloud Director. That really provides one-click application deployment. So if an end user wants a WordPress instance, literally you can, as a provider, make that part of their application catalog in Cloud Director. End user can self-service, one click, boom, they're up and running with a new WordPress instance. They don't have to worry about all the infrastructure details underneath. So I think it's kind of all of those ways that we're looking to extend the capabilities. And then, of course, if you haven't seen it, all new UI, HTML5, we finally kind of got everything ported over and moved over. So just your user experience and look and feel will be all different.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. All right, excellent. Another question that came in from Adam, and it's for you, Andy, and that is about the Veeam Data Lab feature. Does that run in the cloud? Is it something that when you spin up a data lab, does it happen on premises, or how does that work?
Sure. The great thing about data labs is, like I talked about before, how it's an isolated environment, and that can be run on traditional vSphere resources. So, if you have a couple of hosts in a cluster in your vSphere environment that you want to dedicate towards that lab, some people like to leave them up and running all the time. Some people shut them down. But any place that you would be running a vSphere instance, whether it's on-prem or VMware Cloud on AWS, any of those examples where you have vSphere resources, you can run your data labs.
Okay, excellent. And so I think we've covered most of the questions. The last question I wanted to ask here is for you, Andy. How should people get started? What's your recommendation for people who maybe aren't using Veeam or they don't have the latest and greatest? How should they get started?
Well, first of all, they can go to veeam.com. You can download the free trial. If you want to use it at home, you can download our community edition, which allows you, I think, about 10 instances to back up. So you could try that. There's no expiration on that. Our trial includes all of our full featured product, or everything that you can do with Veeam as an enterprise plus license, you can do in the trial. So give it a shot. Go to veeam.com and get in touch with your sales rep if you have any questions. I think it's a great product coming from an IT admin previous position. I can't not see myself using it at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every time we do a webinar with Veeam, we just get tons of comments from people who, are Veeam fans and have been using it for years, and tons of praise for the Veeam solution. So thank you so much for being on the event today, Andy and Michael. Great presentation.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yep. Thanks, David.
And thank you to our audience for joining today's event. Hope that you learned a lot. I know I did. Before we go, I want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card going to Kelly Quarles from Ohio. Congratulations, Kelly Quarles from Ohio. We'll reach out to you to deliver that prize. Again, thank you to Veeam and VMware for supporting today's event, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.